What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the LakerCentral podcast. I'm Alex. That's Vinay. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the videos, pre or post game content. And subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, wherever you get your podcast. So, Vinay, 2 nights in Houston, one win by 18, one by 17. Houston was no match for the
Both
Lakers, man.
both games they were up by even more than that, and it was just
Mm-hmm.
them kind of just running clock in the fourth quarter. This game was even better than the last one. I thought I thought they looked super sharp on the defensive end with like sort of their swarming defense and stuff like that last game. Um, but Lakers came out even more swarmy. Like I don't like a bee, like a hornet's nest, a bee's nest.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Michelle, I'm reading your comment in the chat. I was dead wrong. I thought that they would fight back, and I was just like, "Holy crap!" They got they went down early, and they weren't making shots. And then the
Nope.
Lakers, I mean, they didn't cause as many turnovers like early on. It's just they were playing really good defense and forcing them into bad shots.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that if this is what an engaged defense looks like, I mean that starting lineup was like just like last game was crazy good. And it's some of it is just the athletes, KCP, Anthony Davis blocking shots and all that sort of stuff. But man, like some of the stuff that they were doing tonight was like incredible. AD was all over the place. He like blocked Harden on 2 straight layups, like in,
Yep.
in isolation coverage and stuff like that. Crazy, man. What a crazy defensive game. But just think about like I thought the part that was really cool was when that starting lineup comes out like guns blazing, kind of does the job that we expect them to do.
Yep.
It allows the Lakers to go to a bench unit that can like continue to put pressure
Mm-hmm.
on the defense, like just with the amount of speed that they have. When they run that Horton Tucker and when they run Horton Tucker and who am I thinking of? Caruso, and then sometimes
Caruso.
with Dennis Schroeder too as well. And they're just blitzing teams off the bench. So it's crazy just how good this team looks, and they got a back to back tomorrow. So I'll be curious. It was important for them to get a blowout today because they kept their minutes down. So it'll be real exciting to see how they look.
Yeah, they have OKC tomorrow. It's crazy. I didn't even realize they have a back to back until Raj tweeted something about it, and then I checked it out. But look, man, Lakers have won 6 of their 9 games by at least 14 points this season. They're they're blowing teams out, and this is the kind of effort that I think Lakers fans expect night in and night out. You're not always gonna get it. These are regular guys just like we are. I know they're millionaires and they're otherworldly athletes, but they're regular guys. They're gonna have ups and downs at work just like we do. But something that jumped out to me on the TNT broadcast or on the NBA TV broadcast, Grant Hill was talking about
Mm-hmm.
this Lakers team, and he was just like, "This is a very professional team. Like they're all about their business." And when you look at some of the things that's taking place, with other teams around the NBA, and then you compare it to what the Lakers are, there are no issues. There's no stories leaking out so far, at least in terms of the COVID stuff. Guys are following whatever rules that have been set up, and the Lakers are going to work every single
Mm-hmm.
day, and there's no issues. And I think that says a lot about the culture there, from Jeannie Buss to Rob to Frank to LeBron and AD to all the players. Man, like they're treating this season. They have such a short off season. Like they could easily have
Mm-hmm.
started this season, five and like you thought they would go 500. They could have started off 5-5, but these guys have come
Yeah.
out and they're rolling teams, and
It,
it's
it
special.
it feels like the mood, especially this game, like the mood of the game was very like jovial, like
Yep.
in that first quarter. Like it felt like LeBron was just kind of just like playing basketball and enjoying playing the game and stuff like that. And I thought that was really good. Just for like it kind of gave you an idea of like what the mood of that team was once they came
Hmm.
out to like that. They were like up 15 like within the first 6 minutes of the game or something
Yep.
like that, like some ridiculous number. And I thought I thought I thought that he was. I thought he is a good like barometer. If you watch Braun's body language, and obviously I haven't watched him his entire career, but like today was like one of those days where he felt he was playing like as if he's like on the playground or something like
Yeah.
that. Just because like there were so many plays where like he would come down and he would score like a tough mid range, not even a tough one, but he like make a mid range jumper. But then he would go like 2, 3, 4 plays where like he wouldn't even touch the ball or like he just passed it away and somebody else on the Lakers scored. Anthony Davis or Schroeder or somebody scored, and then eventually it would come back to him. And I wonder if there's like there's got to be some sort of a mental like that part of the load management. Like I don't have to like stress out. Like we've got this team that's really really good. Like I feel like that it pays dividends in the long run, right? Like Anthony Davis, just play your defense. We'll find you when you're open. Don't worry about it. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
LeBron, don't worry about it. When you want it, you can go ahead and take it. If not, we've got other guys that can score too. And it's like obviously this is not a super team. We don't have a third, top 10 player or something like that on this team or a top 15 player. But like the cohesion makes it really hard to beat this team. When this team is clicking, it's really hard to beat. And it's not even so much clicking on the offensive end. Even if they're clicking on the defensive end, like it's really, really hard to beat this team because they'll turn some of those turnovers into transition points. And like the Rockets cleaned up all of those outlet passes. I think the Lakers tried it like twice, and the Rockets, couldn't do anything with it. Or sorry, the Rockets picked it off. But like that's the difference. Like one game we'll blitz you to death in transition, and the next game we'll just play half court defense against you, and we'll be ready for all your sets. And I thought LeBron's mood was really really great to see, and I thought it was good, man. It was just a really really good game today. I don't really have any complaints. Like it was a blowout early. And I thought that it was good that I was surprised that Vogel played him for as long as he did in the third quarter. But like I get it. You got to give these guys like their regular
Right.
25 to 30 minutes, whatever that number is that you want to get them, because you want to keep them, like warm and able. It's avoiding going into that 35, 36 to 40-minute territory if it's at all possible. So it's a great win for this team. It's great for them. Great to see a second effort. This is the first back-to-back where it hasn't been close. The Spurs back-to-back was close, and the Grizzlies back-to-back was very close. But this is the first one. And we also had a fully healthy team going into this. But almost everybody was pretty much healthy, all this of the starters and stuff like that. So and not much to complain about, man. When this team is locked in, it's very, very hard to beat. So, I don't know if there's really anything that I can kind of nitpick about. Even Montrez on defense. Did you see Montrez get like isolated against like Eric Gordon towards like later parts of the game on the bench? Like he was holding his ground, man. Like it's just a different level of confidence that you have when you play well on the defensive end.
So I noticed that like the LeBron and them, they played a lot of minutes at least in the third quarter, and then I think LeBron started the fourth also. But I was actually happy to see that, man, because one, you know how this goes, like go up big and then all of a sudden the reserves come in and they're playing hard because that's what they do. The teams are the reserves, and then it gets it within 15 or 10, and then LeBron and AD got to come up off the bench when they've been cold, sitting there for like 10 minutes. So I'm glad they did it the way they did. They both still played only 29 minutes. So that's a huge plus. I think what you're really getting to see is like this team's defensive identity. Like it is obvious when they come out and they want to lock you down, they lock you down. Like back-to-back nights, James Harden did not look like James Harden. I mean, and I know there's a lot of other stuff going on in Houston, but he looked uninterested. But the Lakers also basically took him out of the game. They did to him what they did in the playoffs. And I'm going to play a little bit of what Frank Vogel talked about after last game we played the Rockets and the Lakers' defensive identity, because they're getting there. But let me play this really quick.
Some nights the offense is going to be there, some nights the defense. I've got a lot of confidence in this team on the defensive end. We've had some nights where we were a step slow to certain things and still learning coverages and whatnot. But I think we're going to be good there. We just got to be a team that buys into being a team first team offensively and continuing to trust the pass. We had 28 assists tonight. That was a big part of it. And this game is as much as any throughout the year was a Laker basketball type of win. Flying around defensively and getting stops without fouls, either forcing turnovers or forcing misses, and then flying on the break. And getting out and the deep advanced passes. Got us 32 fast break points. So sort of an identity win.
So that identity win after the first game in Houston. Now, a number of the stats he rattled off from that first game, it was the same thing tonight. Like he mentioned having 28 assists. Well, they had 26 assists tonight. Um, these guys they really got after it. And team first basketball. I mean, I think they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They had 7 guys in double figures. I mean,
Yep.
they came to play. They had 10 steals, 12 blocks. Houston could do nothing with this team, and I'm starting to
I mean,
wonder. Hmm?
yeah.
Well, I'm starting to wonder at
No,
some
sorry. I was gonna
point.
say that, like the double. Go ahead.
No, I'm just starting to wonder at some point. Like, I know Harden is uninterested, but the rest of the guys have to be looking around like we didn't sign up for this shit. Like, we thought we'd be at least competitive, and they're not competitive at all.
Yeah, I mean, this game they got 0 points out of PJ Tucker. They got 0 points out. So their two starting forwards, Nawaba, PJ Tucker, they got 0 points. Harden 5 of 16. This has to be the worst I think I have ever seen James Harden play basketball. Like he has been legitimately bad.
Yep.
Um, there's a play where he was on isolation against AD, and he just like he like legit just like he like did the splits or something. He just fell over and lost
Mm-hmm.
it, and you know I've never seen a guy play as poorly as he has for a guy that's like without unless he's injured. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
for a guy that's of his caliber, the burst isn't there, the effort isn't there. I mean, the Lakers at some point were like picking on him to some degree, like in post ups and stuff like that every time, and because Houston just would just keep switching it. I genuinely don't know what's going to happen with that team. I expected them to be good because Silas is a good coach, and I think they got good pieces around him. But it's not going to work if Harden's going to be like checked out. And I think I saw a stat or something like that, a stat or something like that, where like this is the first time like he's had 4 games in a row where he's had like less than 20 points or something like that.
Yep.
Like that's absurd. That like for a guy who's won multiple scoring titles, and it's not even a funk. Like he's legit. Not he doesn't look good. Like he's not passing the eye test.
Mm-hmm.
So either he's checked out mentally or something like that, or I mean I don't know, but or he's trying to tank his value. I mean that's the only thing I could possibly think. He's playing poorly, hoping that he's just so bad that they have to get rid of him. You know what I mean? But I mean obviously nobody's going to be trying to miss shots and play like you know what I mean like 25 30 minutes of basketball a night. So I don't know, man. It's gonna hurt their team. So like yeah, Michelle, he was so bad that I probably could have guarded him. And so it's I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't want to say the team because it feels like Wall is engaged. He just had a tough shooting night. The Lakers did a good job not letting him get to the rim too easily.
Mm-hmm.
Wood was like good early on, and then it kind of wore down. It's like when you're getting blown out, it's hard to like be like, and like everything you're doing, nothing can stop them. It's just like it's demoralizing at times. So I understand if that's the reason why they kind of quit mentally to some degree, but I don't know, man. Like I don't know how to describe like what they look like, but the Lakers don't care because they're here
Nope.
to like overwhelm your team. We're gonna be playing OKC tomorrow. They got young guys. They're athletes. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is a very good player. They have Al Horford, a stretch big, a stretch five for them. So it's like they'll be playing like a modern style defense and stuff like that. Sorry, modern style offense, I imagine. So the Lakers will have to be good. Like they've got young guys that'll compete. They're not going to roll over like the Houston guys did tonight. And so I don't know. Somebody asked a question. Brian Tufly asked a question. Was it just a bad night for them? I don't know. Like because they got beat worse than they did the first time. And um, every team that we've seen in the second game, which is specifically the Spurs and the Grizzlies, like those teams battled. Like they were
Yep.
fighting with us, like down. And it was LeBron's heroics that won those games for us towards the end of those games. But this team had no fight at one point, and so I don't know what to expect out of Houston. I think they dropped to like 3-7 on the season, or 3-6 on
Three
the
and
season.
six. Yep.
Yeah, so I don't know what that team looks like, but I didn't expect Houston to be the team that dropped out of the playoffs. But if this, obviously, it's still very early in the season, they haven't even played 10 games. But like, if this kind of stuff continues, like, they may not make it to the playoffs, and that would be a surprise, I would imagine, for some folks. But who cares about Houston? This is too much about Houston. I thought AD's. I don't know what got into AD after he took that break, but it seems like he's trying to collect as many blocks as he possibly can now.
He had 5 tonight.
He's literally, and he's not like protecting the rim. He's like legit like attacking people midair. You know what I mean? Like with some of these blocks and stuff like that he's doing. I thought that highlight of Sterling Brown trying to dunk on him.
Yeah.
And then like Spectrum zoomed in on his face, and he was just like, he's just like, who does this guy think he is? Sort of like thing after he blocked him. I thought that was a good testament to just kind of what his mentality has been. Hey man, if he can't get the MVP, he should go after that Defensive Player of the Year. He deserved it last season, I thought, and I don't see anybody else taking that spot from him this season if his mind is set towards it.
Look, AD is the best player in the game, best defensive player in the game. I think he's the second best player in the whole NBA. Like I just think when he's engaged, he can do whatever he wants. And I don't know if Christian Wood's comments kind of woke him up a little bit the other night. I don't know if whatever rest he needed for missing games, if that helped him the last couple days or whatever's happened with him. He's playing like Anthony Davis, and the crazy part is like he's not putting up 30 and 15 or those crazy 40 and 20 games he was putting up in New Orleans, but he's still extremely dominant. I think he was a plus 23 tonight. Like, he's extremely dominant, and those blocks he was getting. I mean, that one highlight block, like you mentioned against Sterling, that was just ridiculous. But he was like tracking guys as they got kind of got past him a little bit and got to the rim, and he was just pinning it, or he was blocking everything. He was all over the place. I mean, he was highly efficient, 7 for 8 from the field. I mean, LeBron had it going. That 3-pointer LeBron shot and then turned his back to the basket and looked at the bench, and it went in. I mean, I think they knew early on that Houston didn't have it. I think they just knew, and they smelled blood in the water. And rather than mess around with Houston, they just knocked him out, man. Like there was nothing Houston could do against this team. So, the question is, do they keep the same kind of intensity tomorrow on a back-to-back? Look, OKC's they're a well-coached team. They got a lot of young guys. There's no reason why the Lakers shouldn't beat them by 10 also.
Yeah, they should. I don't know if it'll be a 20-point blowout with them, but they should certainly overwhelm that team just with the experience and the talent and stuff that they have. So one of the new trends that I saw today that got used a little bit more was they used that Schroeder and LeBron pick and roll today a little bit more. And lo and behold, because it was a half-court set, they parked Marc Gasol in the corner.
Yep.
So that they had a wide open lane to the rim, and it actually worked really well for the Lakers. And I thought that was interesting because that's the first time this season that I've seen that them finally put Marc Gasol in the corner. So that's when I rewatched the game, or when I pulled the tape on the game, I'm definitely going to see what the end result of those possessions were. But I thought that was like a sneaky wrinkle that the Lakers introduced, obviously when you have a lead, you can test stuff out. And I thought it was really interesting that it worked in a good live ball situation. And so, it's cool that we're able to practice. And it's kind of scary when you think about what's going to happen once they're all fully comfortable and they got it all together, and we're seeing some of it, at least defensively. The communication's been better. Like you said, the bench has not giving up a bunch of points and stuff like that. They're not hemorrhaging leads or anything like that. Trez has looked great in help defense. I think he had 1 or 2 blocks today himself. Taylor Horton-Tucker, up and down game today, but obviously he's a new guy, so it's going to be rough for him. But he was fine today. Caruso was great today. They were getting their hands on balls. Caruso was jumping passing lanes, and then Mr. What's it called? Mr. Reliable now, pretty much. KCP. I think he went 4 for 6. Yeah, 4 for 6 from 3 or 4 for 5 from 3. That guy's been incredible, man. The amount of speed that Schroeder and KCP add to that lineup together is nuts. And KCP's playing with this confidence, man. I don't know how to describe it. He's just, and you could tell he's playing with confidence. He attacks the rim and he takes these threes. So he only played 20 minutes. He attempted 9 shots. He still finished with 14 points. He was a plus 19, third highest plus minus of the entire team. Like, what more can you ask for? It's doing a very good job, just kind of using everybody. And you look at the balance of that starting lineup, right? Scoring wise, obviously LeBron plays with the bench, so he had a couple more points. He scored a little bit more, but 26 for LeBron, 19 for Anthony Davis, 14 for Pope, 14 for Schroeder, and then 5 for Mark. But Mark had 5 assists. He had as many assists as LeBron, even though he played 8 less minutes. So it's like these guys are all doing their part, like, and they're doing what we expect them to do. And so, we didn't have Wes Matthews today, so that's another shooter, defender guy that we could have possibly added if we needed it, or that we'll have. I don't think he's playing tomorrow. I think they already announced that he's not going to be able to play tomorrow. So hopefully his what's it called? So hopefully his Achilles is sore or something like that.
Yeah,
So hopefully he feels better. But yeah, he looks good, man. Like all these guys look good. These 2 games. Do you remember last season when every time the Lakers would go on a road, like national media was turning it into like this? Oh, if they split on the road, if they lose more, if they lose more games than they do win games on the road, is this team for real? Is this team for real? It seems like that's like the thing this season, right? Like they're taking their road games very seriously because they don't want anybody to turn around and be like, like this team's not for real because they can't travel to Houston and beat them or something like that, or to the Spurs or whatever. It seems like that theme is consistent from last year to this year, where when they're at home, they aren't as locked in, maybe because they're just enjoying time with their family and they're not locked in. But when they go on the road, man, they're very serious about like winning these games on the road.
They're not messing around. I mean, it's like they take these games seriously, and I think that I think the help that LeBron and Anthony Davis is getting across the board, like you said, KCP, his confidence has been there all season long. I think that it developed in the playoffs and finals last year, and it's carried over. Like Schroeder has been amazing, and you're right, the speed that they add to that lineup. So you think about last year, when like guys like Avery Bradley and Rondo were in that starting lineup. They're certainly crafty and they can be quick, but they're not the same as KCP and Dennis Schroeder, right? And then you look at the bench now, and you still have speed coming off the bench and THT and Caruso. Like that speed, like they keep coming at you despite whoever, doesn't matter whoever's at the guard positions. And it's good to see Trez get more involved. We talked about this when they picked him up in the offseason. Vogel would figure out a way to kind of put Trez in the best defensive positions. And it's it's still a work in progress. But I think he's looked better this year defensively with the Lakers than he did all of last season with the Clippers. I think the Clippers put him in the wrong spots day in and day out. But I think one of the things that fuels this Lakers team is simply that like they know the task at hand. And my thing is, if you're going to sacrifice, like I think the league just said today, like these guys, you can't leave your home now unless it's to go to the arena or something with the team.
Oh yeah.
Like if you're going to sacrifice your freedom, then you might as well show up and do your job, right? Like what's the point in playing this season if you're going to just kind of not care? Like like we were talking about with Kyrie and what's going on with the Nets in the pregame. So I'm really pleased at what I've seen out of them. Like maybe 3 or 4 games ago, there was a lot of issues and a lot of whispers about what's wrong with this team. They need a more athletic big. What's wrong with Anthony Davis. But we see this like maybe every couple games. It's just like they turn it on. And I think that they have that gear. And it's just there's no point in them playing extremely hard every night. But when they want to jump on a team, I mean, there's nothing these other teams can do. And as we chug along in the season, we have the Bucks coming up on the 21st. I'm really curious to see, what kind of approach they take against the Bucks. Like a really good team. Like we played the Clippers opening night. That didn't really count.
Yeah.
We played Denver. We played Dallas. We blew them out. Houston isn't Houston anymore. At least right now they're not. So yeah. I'm eyeballing like the true contenders, and the Bucks I think is their first crack at somebody.
Yeah, and so one of the things that I was going to say is you mentioned something interesting, right? Like Montrez is Montrez has looked much better defensively this year compared to what he looked like last year. So one of the things I've watched a couple Clippers games. and we're not going to talk about the Clippers that much. I just want to give folks an idea of what I think was happening. A lot of astute Laker fans on the timeline, when they were watching that Clippers series and they were pulling data, they realized that Montrez's plus minus when it came to that Denver series was less related to just his effort individually. Did he have some lapses in judgment? For sure. But it had to do with him having to cover up for the mistakes of his teammates.
Yep.
And that was one of the issues that was happening when Denver would specifically go to that pick and roll. They were not running pick and roll. They were running pick and pop. And what was happening was they were specifically targeting guys like Lou Williams and stuff like that on their team. So because of that, Zubac, who no longer plays starting center for them, he's their backup center. They actually look. They've moved him to the bench. So what's happened with that lineup? So let's say. So while you were talking, I decided to go and pull some lineup data in regards to what the Clippers are running. So in 21 minutes of a lineup that involves, and now mind you, I don't know how much of this is like garbage time for this team or what it is and whatnot. So these are just very cursory sort of things. Now Zubac was one of the best defenders at the rim this season, or sorry, not this season, last season. So in terms of frequency, there's a specific lineup that has shown up that the Clippers have used 6 games already. This lineup's appeared. It's played a total of 14 minutes, and that lineup has Nick Batum, Good Beverly, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, all 3 very good defenders, and Zubac.
Yep.
And that lineup is plus 22. That's the net rating of plus 22. So that's a very good lineup. Plus 22 is great for any sort of lineup. Now we go to the next one that has the frequency of 5 games. That lineup is Lou Williams, Nick Batum, Kawhi Leonard, Luke Kennard, and Ivica Zubac. So instead of Paul George and Pat Beverly, good defenders, they put in Luke Kennard, not a good defender, and Lou Williams, not a good defender. That net rating of that lineup is minus 5.7. The next one, that lineup had 14 minutes. The next one has Lou Williams, Nick Batum, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and Ivica Zubac. So it's everybody except Pat Beverly. The starting lineup minus Pat Beverly, and you put Lou Williams in there instead. And that lineup is in 10 minutes is minus 45, which is a hideous number. So when you think about, one thing, a concept that we try to talk about when we watch basketball, it's something that we try to tell folks, is defense in the NBA, because of the way offensive work, the concept is called points of failure. When you have one point of failure, that the teams know that if I attack this player or if I specifically target this player, there's going to be a defensive breakdown, right? Or the defense will have to help over or something like that. A single point of failure, depending on how bad it is, can result in multiple points of failure. Now you have to help on this guy, so then the ball swings this way, and then eventually makes it to the corner, and then there's a corner 3. Now we're giving up corner 3s every single time, and that lineup data looks terrible. So the reason why I went on that tangent is because Montrez was a victim of that. And that's what I think it was with him last season. That because he was getting paired up, he was being asked to cover for the mistakes of individual players, he looked really bad.
Yep.
And what compounded that situation and made it worse was those lineups wouldn't score either. And now what's happened is where he doesn't have to cover for bad defenders, right? It's Alex Caruso, good defender. Taylor Horton-Tucker, good defender. Markieff Morris, a good defender. And even Kuzma, to some degree, is a good effort defender. He'll try and put a body in front of somebody else. Wes Matthews, another good defender. When you have good guys in front of you and you're the guy that's at the very end on the back line, your job is much, much easier. And I think one of the things that the Lakers decided to do, especially in this matchup, is when if teams try to run that pick and roll, Montrez would just switch it. They said, just switch it. We'll take our chances with these guys either trying to take contested layups on you or whatever it is. And so he ended up being successful. It worked out for the Lakers in this Houston series. And I expect the Lakers to continue doing that. When Montrez is on the floor, they're not going to have him do drop coverage where he stands all the way by the rim. They're going to have him come up. And they'll say that if this is, like a guy who's more of a jump shooter and not a guy who's going to like really blow by you, they'll let him take the switch. And they trust him to make the right decision. And if he has a bad game, he has a bad game. It's fine. It's not a big deal. But it's that trust in each other defensively and stuff like that that's important. And I think that's been a big thing that it's been a big thing that folks, that the analytics puts a gap in your data for. right?
Mm-hmm.
You look at data and you say, "Oh my God, this lineup is trash. Who's the guy that's supposed to be protecting the rim?" Then you immediately go and you look and see, "Oh my God, he's just fouling everybody. He can't defend anybody in space." Blah blah blah. And then, but then you never look to see what else, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
individual data metrics and stuff like that. It never works if you don't look at film. And I think the conversation about Trez's defense. I know Kevin O'Connor did. I tweeted about it, and I was just like, "All right, man. Like, there's no way you're watching this game to think that Trez is the reason that we lost that Portland game, which was close. Even if he was playing that badly, I don't think that game would have been that close. But I think the narrative will change on him. The narrative changed on Kuzma last season when he was in the bubble, because when we had to go into the playoffs, Vogel gave specific assignments. And he said, "Kuzma, this is who you're defending. This is how I want you to defend him." And when you get to the playoffs and you can give specific assignments to everybody on the team that way, and you could say, "Look, you three guys are going to be the guys that have to defend Jimmy Butler tonight.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not putting anybody else on him unless you guys get in foul trouble. This is how I need you guys to defend him." That's all you need. And that's how guys end up being successful in the league. And guys like Kuzma and Taylor Horn Tucker and Caruso, that's how they end up becoming successful in the league, because you have a good coaching staff that scouted everything out correctly. And what more can you ask for, man? We have a defensive, a defense first head coach, and he's enabling guys who are good athletes and who are, like competitive guys. They may not be the most technical defenders, but they're good effort defenders. And with good coaching, they can be great defenders. With a guy like Anthony Davis or LeBron James standing behind him.
I think Vogel's just done a really good job putting guys in the right positions, and I think that a lot of the stuff with Trez last year with the Clippers, it was not solely on Trez's shoulders. I think that he was an scapegoat. I think when the Clippers melted down last year, people didn't really want to take a look at Kawhi. People obviously pointed the finger at Paul George, but I think Trez caught the brunt of, well, how come they didn't beat Denver, and how come Jokic cooked him. And the truth was, he wasn't even guarding Jokic a lot of the time. But it was this narrative that well, Trez is the reason why he can't guard 7-footers. This is why they lost or whatever. So, but this team is just really good, and so I don't want to say that I'm surprised that the Lakers have come out guns blazing like this. I'm one of the people that think that they could still win the West this year. I know a lot of people just feel like they can kind of take games off and they don't need to get the 1 seed or anything. And who knows, we might play in a bubble anyway, so the seeding might not matter as much as it would in a normal season. But I just think that they are good enough as they stand to still get the 1 seed. Other teams are trying to figure it out, man. Have you watched Denver this season? Denver, I don't know what's going on with them. The contenders last year aren't, at least in the Western Conference, aren't the same.
Yeah, so I honestly do think for some of these teams,